Welcome back to our Ark Nova Strategy Guide. Today we're going to look at some tips and tricks to help you win Ark Nova. First of all, I want to talk about Clever, because I feel like high elo players are very good at using Clever. Clever is this effect that you can either do it by Xing down something, or even better, you can get it with one of these effects. In the late game, you should play fewer build and card actions, and if you have what you need, then definitely you need to Clever back building cards.
It kind of depends on like what resource you're lacking, right? If you don't have any playable things, you're gonna have to take cards, even if it's pretty bad. Like optimally you have everything set up for like the final break. Sometimes you don't. Even a strong player might not have every piece in place. Usually in the mid to late game you're gonna have one action that's a lot worse than the rest of the actions, and it's usually cards and build.
Just to give you an example, I had a game a while back. All I need here is like a 2 enclosure and a 3 enclosure, and that's all I need to finish the game. My first thought is to place it here and here, just to get the 2 X's. But then I thought I could actually also put it down here in this direction, because then I can reach the Clever tile, so I could Clever back cards. In this case, I thought it made a lot of sense to build like this. So it did cost me an X token, but I think it's definitely worth it. I chose to put down cards to level 1 here, and the reason I did that is because at this point I have everything I need to actually close out the game. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to play Muskox and Mamba, and then I want to release the Muskox with the Bamboo Forest. Then I can get the X2, which I believe I'm going to use on Sponsor just to break 10. And then I have everything I need to close it out in the next round, because then I can play my Grizzly Bear, my Sumatran Tiger. Then I can claim the Predators on 4 or 5. Probably going to be 4 because the other guy also has it. And then at the end I can do Savannah. So I didn't have everything exactly mapped out.
Seems like your opponent did mess up by doing Predator 5.
Yeah, the reason is I also have Predators 5 available. You just don't see it because I have the sponsor card that gives me +1, and then I just released the last Predator, so I also had Predator 5 actually. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't usually do this, but when I have a game like this, I would definitely do everything I can to bring back cards and build.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to put back both cards and build. Like, even if it's not enough, you're still gonna get card from the reputation, and like,
Yep.
I'm not sure what rewards you have, but most people take snapping nowadays.
Yeah,
So,
let's see. Yeah, I have snapping, you're right.
Yeah.
I remember this is one of the games where I'm kind of proud of myself. I felt like I was finally becoming a better player, because usually what I do is I build the entire map, and this time I actually won with Naturally Sue. And I hate Naturally Sue, it's like my least favorite end game to have.
It's the least fun one, at least.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
Building's fun.
Yeah. So the thing is, the build and the cards actions, they generate no points. So this is why, generally speaking, I feel like it's good to put them back in the late game.
Building cards is necessary to give you points. At least what I do is I try to take my build and cards before I reach close to the conclusion of the game. If you have to take them then, like maybe your opponent just crosses and you're caught with your pants down.
Yep. The column that says all is like all players, and the other columns are like the top 20 pro players.
I mean, if you just look at these stats, everything is lower, right? Because we have a lower number of turns. It's like literally every action is lower.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. Everything is lower here. Maybe it's a bad graph.
I think it's a good graph, but I would probably do the math on builds and cards, see which one is lower.
In editing, if I'm lazy, I'm not gonna do it, but maybe I'll do it. Let's see.
Yeah.
Pretty much the takeaway here is you should try to use fewer build and card actions during the late game if you have what you need. And maybe you'll still have to use build actions if you want to fill out the map and stuff. Everything, it depends, I guess. If you want to see an absolute epic game with a lot of clever, I recommend you watch this game from San. He did this game where I believe it's Monkey Deuce who did a 23 turn game. Is this the fastest game you've ever seen?
I mean, I did a 24 turn game in the same video. I'm not saying there was some collusion between Monkey Doo and his opponent, but I mean, I'm just asking questions.
Alright, I'm picking up a little bit of salt.
It's very dependent on your opponent.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Number of turns.
If you have a good game, it's maybe 29 turns or 28 turns, and sometimes it's amazing, but sometimes you would have played better if you played like 33 turns, because the correct play would be to slow play in the second to last round or something. It's kind of hard to say, but just for the sake of closing the game in the fewest rounds as possible, I think this game is very fun to watch. Definitely abused expert on Africa in this one.
It's kind of funny, because my 24 turns games is literally in the same video.
Yeah.
And it's on the same map with Expert on Africa as well, which is
really?
And Mercatan as well, which is kind of funny.
Now I regret, I actually only saw the first one, and then he said the next one is not gonna be 23, and I was like, I didn't watch it. If I knew it was you, I probably would have watched that one too. Now let's talk about the petting zoo. There is a lot of skill cap to petting zoos in general, especially how you place the tile. What's your take on petting zoos?
I don't like them. I like the shape of it. I don't like the animal type. but sometimes you need to build a petting zoo.
So of course we know that there are 10 petting zoos, and if you're playing with the expansion there are 2 more petting zoos and also this completely insane horse whisperer card, but we're gonna talk about the expansion at a later point. But I just wanted to just quickly mention it. The expansion definitely buffs petting zoo a little bit in my opinion. When would you actually play petting zoos? Because I feel like they can be good to begin with just to get some engine, but actually more likely you play them later to get the tickets, because early on it's kinda awkward, right? Because they don't give you any tax.
Yeah, like even if you have a hand with triple petting zoo in, it's so bad because you don't work towards the conservation at all.
Yep.
But also like donkey and especially horse are very good value compared to the rest. So like that might be more tempting to do a petting zoo for if you have one of those.
The thing about the petting zoo tile is it works with kiosks, just like the aviary and the reptile house, even though it's empty. So in some maps, do you actually just place a petting zoo just to build on the map and just to place them next to kiosks? Or is it more like to get to the next good place bonus? Is that why you're using it?
I mean, it's a combination of both, and I have nothing else to build. But yeah, it's usually on ICP.
Because on ice cream parlors, you definitely want to get to the other side of the map to get to the other kiosks, so you can get a nice income.
Yeah, but you can also connect the petting zoo to kiosks, and ICP in general have very good placement rewards.
Petting zoos are of course better if you have a few of them in your hand, but like we talked about, it really comes down to the base projects. If you build petting zoos just for building your engine, it can work, but then you really also have to pay attention to the base projects because you might really screw yourself. Let's talk about petting zoo placements. For example, if you start with a horse, you can reach the 4 reputation we were talking about to get to the upgrade. It is on 5, but you only need 4 reputation to get there because you start on 1. Like you were saying, on Ice Cream Parlor, it makes a lot of sense to place petting zoos because you just get a lot of free kiosks and you want to connect to the other side of the map. Yeah, I kind of feel like I'd rather have a zoo school, but like if I don't have a zoo school, then a petting zoo with a horse is like a discount zoo school in a way.
I think the horse is a bad Tasmanian devil. It's the exact same cost, right? But it has less requirements, you get more placement bonuses, but it's 1 less appeal and you don't get the pouch ability. But then you also have the petting zoo for later, I guess.
And if you don't have a horse, you can also place the petting zoos like this on Ice Cream Parlor in order to get to the other reputation, to go to 5 reputation. So this is kind of like a discount Rhesus Monkey, but worse. Here is one that kind of blew my mind because I hadn't seen this before. I saw it on one of your games, I think, where you just put a petting zoo right here. Because even if you have no petting zoo, it's a really good spot to get it because you get the reputation, you get to get a card from reputation range, and more importantly, you make your way into the middle. So this petting zoo is kind of cool.
It's really good turn 1
Yeah.
to grab something from follow 2 if it's wrong, or even you could get signs to rep and grab something from follow 3. So situation are very good.
So this placement in itself is actually so good that it buffs the entire petting zoo faction. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
JD, you're kind of famous for placing the weirdest petting zoo even though you don't even have a single petting zoo in your hand. What's the deal?
I think it's just intuition, I don't know. I'd say Dwarven does more crazy petting zoos than me.
Your microphone is bad again, I'm sorry. Yeah, just repeat that part with, what was it, Dwarven?
Yeah, I think Dwarven is more stupid than me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely what it was.
Yeah.
For more on empty petting zoos, Sam actually did a video where he talks about empty petting zoos, who started doing it and when you should do it and stuff. Tip number 3. You want to complete your early game development as soon as possible. And then also snapping, because when I started up this game, I thought snapping would be some like luxury you'd go for later on. I thought it would be more important to complete your early game, but for some reason you guys really love snapping, and I can see it because when I've begun climbing to higher ranks, I can see the value of snapping. It's definitely something you have to consider. So when I say early game development, what I'm kind of talking about is either you want to get 2 unis or 2 partner zoos. You want to get +1 workers as fast as possible. You want to reach 5 reputation, preferably 8 if you can. And also you want some gold income, you want to get 2 shields. And then also you want to get snapping. Something I learned by watching your streams is if there is a university here on 5 shields, it's something you really have to fight for. Recently I started playing in low elo and then I climbed to high elo. What I realized by playing so many different opponents so fast is like when you play low rated opponents, it feels like you can get away with taking worker and stuff, because with worker people are not just gonna break on you in low elo. But the higher you get, snapping is more important because you want to get the cards you need, but especially you also want to deny the card the opponent needs. Low elo players don't really think about this, about what to deny your opponent. I think that's a big reason why snapping is so good in high elo.
High elo players know when a break is good for them and it's bad for them. If you take a worker, you might not be able to use that worker. Like even if they have 4 sponsor cards in hand, they might just break 5 instead.
So JDan, why is snapping so important in high elo games?
It's very important to control whatever your opponent is doing. You don't want them to have beneficial breaks, so it might be good to like save a couple of X tokens just to be able to cause your break. That's also like the same reason snapping is good, because you control the display. If there's something scary, you can snap it away, but it could also be scary just for opponent, they ignite them it. If you get an early lead, and you like to take every card your opponent needs to make a comeback, like opponent's gonna have to draw randomly from deck, and I would say definitely decreases their chances of finding a good card.
Snapping, it's basically a half of a card action. Sometimes it's like an entire action you skip every time. I guess it's better than I thought to begin with.
Like early on, you usually want to snap up something from display, right?
Yeah. Tip number 4, let's talk about workers. You pretty much want your second worker as soon as possible. In the early game it feels like 2 workers is kind of all you need. Then when we get to the mid to late game, you kind of want your third worker, 1 worker to support a conservation project, and then you need 2 workers to do it again in the same round. And then the 4th worker, the way I see it, is pretty much, well, if it has shields on it, or maybe in some niche scenarios you could use the 4th workers in the last round, maybe if you've upgraded your association and stuff like this.
I mean, the 4th worker is very important on maps where you get 2 CP from getting the 4th worker. You're saying you want your second worker ASAP, and that would be true maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
But the game has evolved to the point where people just are very good on understanding when to break.
Yeah.
So it's not like essential rushing workers anymore.
Yeah, that's actually the next thing I was gonna say here. It feels like if you're taking the second worker to begin with, people are just gonna break on you and they're gonna punish you. It feels to me like if you are gonna take the worker to begin with, you have to do it at the start of the round, so you actually get some use out of your second worker.
Yeah, and also it sounds a bit ridiculous, but it's actually true. There's a difference if you're starting university or partner suit, because it's only one different strength, right? But if you're gonna get a university from your worker, it could be problematic compared to a partnership. It doesn't sound like a big difference, but it actually is. Like the one strength difference is a lot.
There's one of the guys you talked about, he doesn't really value reputation and workers that much because he just keeps breaking.
Yeah, I think it's Warren.
Yeah.
He's a bit weird, you know.
When I started off playing the game, I always took worker first, but now I'm like, I almost never take worker first because it really doesn't feel good to take the worker first because people are gonna break on you. It feels much better if you can get the second worker some other way, yeah.
Even if you get to use the worker the round you got it, your associate is probably gonna start at 1 or 2, and then you're probably not gonna get to use 2 workers next round.
Yeah.
If your opponent knows what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say, but you explained it much better than me, yeah.
People below 500 elo, they don't know that, right? They see a sponsor in hand and they just play it.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, a better player might just break 5 instead, where they have an excellent sponsor to play and have to discard a card. Because it's the right thing to do.
I guess we can pretty much agree that it just feels much better to get like first seal, a taco, or 8 reputation, get a second worker that way, instead of actually having to take the reward.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, I also know that there's a trend in the last, I don't know, a year or 2, where people are beginning to take a worker on 2 CP a lot more often.
It's hard to give general advice, but I'd say, let's say you don't need build flip immediately, for example, or sponsors. You don't need the upgrade immediately, pretty much. It could be a good option.
It feels like I just need to plan out what are the 2 upgrades I'm not gonna have this round. If I'm not upgrading sponsors, there are literally no sponsors really. Maybe sponsors and association, maybe these are the 2 I'm not upgrading, and I'm like, well, I already know that I don't really need these 2 upgrades, so in that case, I feel like I can get away with taking worker on 2VP.
Yeah, you can cheat on a lot of upgrades. You can cheat on build if you get 2 stacks reward. You can cheat on cards if you don't like to get that much rep, etc.
I'm just gonna let you have this one. Please rate these bonuses.
University is the best, Handshake is the second best, probably say 10 money is the third best, at least if you get it early. X tokens is probably 4th best, 2 rep 5th best, X2, and then the rest are situational.
I would say that X2 is also very situational. I think sometimes it's like the best and sometimes it's literally nothing. It's just high variance.
Yeah. You need something good to use with it. Like you can't really control when to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
That was... on commercial harbor, you can actually...
Yeah. Yeah, the X2 on Commercial Harbor is a lot better because you can get it like at the start of the round with like your 2 enclosure bonus or something. But yeah, that's what I was about to say. It's really hard to actually take the X2 on the track at the right time because you have to get there before your opponent. You can't only get points when you use association, and then you want to put your X2 on association and then it's at the bottom, so it's kind of awkward. I have been stomped a couple of times by people who just line it up perfectly, so they use animals with like 1 or 2 shields on it, and then they get the X2 at the perfect time to put it on association or something. So this is one of my earlier games. I played this guy, Nimuak. You probably played it before, I'm guessing. Here I take the reptile breeding program because I can use that. And then I take Partner 2. Now we get to the next round. He also does association on 5, and he takes the X2 token and he puts it on animals. I didn't see this play because he didn't have that many enclosures, but then of course we are playing on this map where he can actually get a reptile house as his reward. As you can imagine, I'm about to get absolutely owned here because he plays 4 animals, and then he also plays geologist because he plays a herbivore. So in one round he just gets 35 points. I just thought this was a really cool play. Tip number 6. In the first round, is there any way you can cheese and swindle yourself into a super fast early upgrade? Is there any way you can actually upgrade build before your first build action? That's kind of like the first thing I look at when I'm playing a game now. So for example, the classic is Zoo School together with this uni. It does require your action cards to be set up right.
Actually, it's not true on any map. It doesn't work on Silver Lake.
Yeah, but it used to. This is on the old maps, right?
No, it didn't used to work on
Am I stupid?
Silver Lake.
Okay, so
No, it's never worked on Silver Lake.
in my mind you could put it on the left, but maybe you're right. Maybe yeah, it's actually too.
Yeah, I'm
further up,
100% right.
Yeah.
Too.
All right, so almost on any map. But I mean, you would still keep Zoo School on Silver Lake, right? It's just too good.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to take a build action first, and then you have 2 rep on it. It works on the new Silver Lake.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay. My bad.
No worries.
Yeah, and I think people probably know this, but if you put the Zoo School on top of the 1 reputation on the map, you'll get like 2 reputation instantly, and then you can get the other 2 reputation with the uni, and then you already have an upgrade after 2 actions.
Zoo School is probably one of the best cards to have in your opening hand.
For an institute, it's kind of the same deal, but it's a little bit awkward because you have to get an X somewhere on the map. You can build on the map to get an X, or you can just straight up X something back, clever something back. But it's kind of the same deal. You can also do this to get a super fast upgrade if you want to. Here's something I learned from watching one of your games, or one of your streams or something. I never thought about this, but you can actually put the Reese's Monkey Park on Ice Cream Parlor in this position to get to reputation. It's not quite like this on the new Ice Cream Parlor, at least on Board Game Arena, but it's like a Zoo School in this case, because you get the 2 reputation instantly, then you can take the unit, get a super fast upgrade. Also a very good opening to have. Finally, there are also some weird creative situations where you could also do it. You don't really see this situation before they actually happen, but I had a crazy game here. I started with Expert on Europe, and then I took a Partner 2 to get the Scarlet Macau. I just play the Macau, and then I have 3 Kiosks Pavilion, so I can get this instantly before actually using build. So this is obviously a crazy case of having Expert on Europe into Scarlet Macau. That's very unlikely. You can also have 2 shields from cards. Could be Tapir plus Guided School Tours. I know the Tapir is kind of expensive to begin with, but it's like just an example of getting 2 points. Could also be Science Unit plus Relief of Patterns. This one I'm very curious about.
I think it's great.
Yeah?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't upgrade build. I usually get a worker when I do it.
Oh yeah, okay, so you use this to get a worker because that makes up for the fact that you had to take such a bad uni. That actually makes a lot of sense. If you can get one of the super fast base projects like Expert on Europe and Slowplaying, for example, that's obviously also completely crazy lucky if that happens, but some of these small combinations, it's also really powerful if you can actually support a base conservation project already on turn 1 before the break.
I mean, it kind of depends on your action order.
Yeah.
I think in general, turn 1 projects are not that strong. People overdo it a lot.
I think I agree with you when it comes to releases, but this I would do every single time. If I have this combination, I would just do it every game. I don't see why not. Can you explain?
I mean, the example you provided, sure, but let's say you have small animals, as you said.
Yeah.
Your animals is always starting at 1, so it's gonna be awkward.
Okay,
that,
yeah, I can understand that one.
In the example you provided also, you might just want to go 4 Europe here instead. There's a big difference between 2 and 4 CP.
Yeah, I can see that actually. Yeah, we also have some other combinations. It could be Cheetah plus Predator, depending on which is open. Maybe also you could consider 4 or 5, but I still feel like it's very strong to get a super fast upgrade like this.
It's better in 3 and 4 player games than 2 players. because the breaks are a lot quicker in 2 players.
I see what you're saying. You're more playing to help yourself, you're not playing to hurt your opponent. And in 2-player games,
Yeah.
you're kind of playing to hurt your opponents. I see.
Yeah.
It could also be Science Institute plus research. Could also be some archaeologist shenanigans, especially on outdoor parks or something. Could also be an early release project, like Wolf Savannah. I think we talked about releases previously, that you really have to be careful. You can actually screw yourself a little bit if you release in the first round. In this case, I would probably still do this every time in the first round, right? Because you can get to the second bonus on the VP track. So
once again, you don't have to do it round 1 if your actions are awkward. I mean, the Wolf is pretty good because it's fairly cheap and you get to keep some appeal, but I don't think there's a rush really. Just get the income from first break and then you can release it.
There's also this super interesting game where it actually did happen, and then he took snapping, got the Technology Institute, and the game was very entertaining to watch.
That wasn't very entertaining. Basically over.
Getting Wolf down, releasing it, of course, very, very good, very lucky Technology Institute. But the thing that really killed the game completely is that there was a university on 5 shields. So he just gets a free university on top of it, and that's kind of the reason you couldn't really come back, you felt like. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play perfectly that game, but I don't think it matters at that point, because with a start like that, the game is just over since starting hand. I do think University and Partner Zoo shouldn't be a deeper reward, because it can lead to a lot of snowballing like that.
In this particular game we just looked at, you probably couldn't have done anything, but generally speaking, if your opponent has a really good first round like this, well, then you probably should break. So that's the next thing we should talk about. Basically, if your opponent has a better round with a lot of things he can still do, maybe he's setting up to make a big play or something, maybe your opponent simply has more stuff than you left to do in the round. Maybe he has more gold, more workers, more cards. The main thing I look at is definitely workers, but I mean all of these factors here, it's kind of what you look at when you decide, do I play that really good sponsor or do I just break immediately? And also, if you do break, who will benefit more from the break? Who has most gold income? Who has most awards and stuff?
Yeah, I think that's faulty logic though, because the break is going to happen eventually, right? And if you have no way to boost your income, it's not going to matter because it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, no, I guess you're right. There's still like a few scenarios where it could make sense. Maybe if I cause this break, maybe that means that there's gonna be one more break in the game. So in that sense, maybe he's gonna get more out of it. But I think generally speaking, you're correct, of course.
No, I actually don't agree with you at all there. I just think the break is gonna happen eventually. What else do we have left in the round to do? What else does my opponent have left in the round to do? A lot of newer players is complaining like side entrance is absolutely broken, but like the counter to side entrance is just breaking a lot.
Yeah.
Like don't let your opponent spend their money and they end up with like 100 money. It's not a very logical concept that more breaks when your opponent has better income is good. But it's usually, at least for side entrance, it's usually how it goes.
And also how the actions are set up. I don't think I'm mentioning it here, but like if you have your association on 5 and the other guy just has it on 1 because he just used it, maybe it's a good time to break because then your association is in a better position.
Yeah.
There's also this really annoying super fast first round break that happens sometimes. If you have bad cards or if your opponent has a very good round, maybe you just want to get out of the round as soon as possible, just break as soon as possible. It can be really annoying if you just take a super fast Handsize and just break 5. Is this still something you would do sometimes, or?
Yeah, of course. Although it's a bit more dodgy in the screenshots on the screen right now because you're second player. So your opponent can maybe get a partner zoo, build an enclosure, play an animal, and then cost the break and get the X token. But I mean, if you were first player here, even if you have a great sponsor in hand, let's say federal grants or something, it's probably correct to just snap something. Display can have to be strong, because a stronger opponent here, if the display is pretty bad, a stronger opponent is just gonna chill on taking cards. But if the display is very strong, you should probably snap something up, get Handsize and break 5.
Yeah, that's a good
If
point.
you're first player.
Yeah, that's the difference between me and you, because I never think about if I'm first or second player. But now that you say it, it makes a lot of sense.
It's not every game, but there's a lot of games where being first player is just a massive advantage.
Maybe the 1 ticket is not even enough. Should it be like 3 tickets or something, you think?
I think second player should start with X token, or either second player should start with X token, or you get 2 set of actions and second player chooses what set of actions they want. But the 1 appeal is pretty bad because you can't do a 4 appeal sponsor. There's a lot of 4 appeal sponsors, like at least 4 on top of my head. But if you do that, you can get pilfered. So it's like,
Oh yeah.
it's almost
Disadvantage.
yeah, it's almost a disadvantage, which is kind of ridiculous. I talked to the publishers about it. So basically, they didn't expect people to play mirror maps, which is the norm on BDA. And if you don't play mirror map, I think second player get to choose the map first.
Oh, really? Is that a rule?
Yeah, I think so.
Ah.
I mean, it's a huge advantage, right? If you can get Silver Lake and leave your opponent with like a park restaurant.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's good for you, don't be shy to just break as fast as possible, even though you have to discard a card or you don't play an animal yet or something.
Yeah. Or it doesn't even have to be good for you. It just has to be bad for your opponent.
Yeah, that's the more important point, I guess. So.
Yeah.
This is never happening for high elo players, but just to give you a quick example, there was a game here where I started off taking a partner suit, and then my opponent was breaking 5, and then I was like, well, thank you for the free win, I'm just gonna break 5 as well, because what just happened? I just played the first round, and I got to play my worker, and he didn't. It's a massive advantage. In other words, if it benefits you to stay in the round, well then, you shall not pass. I think this is a joke I did in Terraforming Mars, but it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's more like this in Ark Nova. Do you want to do your best Gandalf impression? Do you have one in you?
No.
Alright. So in other words, if it benefits you to stay in the round, well then you shall not break. That's not a good impression either. We're gonna leave it at that.
I mean, at least you have the balls to do it. Okay, I'm just sitting here,
I can
not
do better.
even trying.
I can do better. You shall not break. That's the best I got.
Sure.
Good players, they really understand when to break.
Well, I mean, of course, there's a skill cap when understanding when to break, but I think, at least on BGA, people who are 5 to 600 EL plus, they all understand what breaks are good for them and what breaks are bad for them. Of course, the majority is below 600, so of course there's a huge skill cap then.
Basically, it's just what we talked about, right? It's just identifying who benefits from sitting in the round, who has more workers, more gold, stuff like this.
Of course, there's always niche scenarios, but there are also like action orders for next round, etc.
Yeah.
You expect your opponent to have like a billion sponsor cards to just play out. Do you have sponsors card to play out? It's a lot of variables, but mostly it's money and workers.
Yeah, and also threatening a break can also force your opponent into bad play. Maybe he's forced to use his worker on a lower strength than he wanted to. It's not to say that you should always use your worker in that case. Maybe sometimes it's better to actually not use your worker so it has a bigger strength.
Yeah.
X tokens, they are of course important if you want to control the breaks. I know this is something that you talk about a lot. It's also the reason that Technology Institute is such a good card in 2-player games, because it just gives you more X token, especially at the start of the game.
There's some games, you know, from the start, oh, I don't want to push break at all. Like maybe you start with 4 sponsors. Like maybe you have a native farm animals you have to build up for.
Side entrance, something,
Yeah, exactly.
Tip number 8. In the second to last round, it's sometimes correct to be slow playing the hell out of this game. You say it doesn't come up that often.
Yeah, maybe like 5% of game, I'd say.
Yeah.
You mean slow play before the last break, right?
Yeah, I mean slow play before the last break. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Sometimes you really need 2 actions with all your workers, all your money in the last round. And if your opponent just finishes the round before you get those 2 actions, the game, I mean, you're gonna be in trouble. And the counter argument is it could be bad to give your opponent 2 actions in the last round.
Yeah, but basically the whole underlying idea here is that can you afford to give your opponent 1 extra action? Because it feels like when you're slow playing in the second to last round, if you're the one breaking, that it feels like your opponent, quote unquote, gets 1 more action in the game. So that's kind of the thing you have to think about, right? In the second to last round.
Yeah, it's basically giving your opponent an eagle.
And this is why, like we talked about before, that you thought that maybe it would be a good idea to just give people 2 shields in case they trigger the last break or something.
That's mostly in free-play games, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe there's an argument to give a shield to whoever won process first in 2-player games.
Yeah.
Whoever finishes the game.
Yeah, that could be a good idea as well, yeah.
Yeah.
I have an example here. When I was watching one of your games, it kind of blew my mind. You actually said in your stream that the best play your opponent can do in this position is to break 2. I can understand it now, but when I was watching this, it was a bit counterintuitive. If he breaks 2, then you cannot take cards. Is it also because of that, or...?
Yeah, exactly. Like I have 1 card in hand. I don't know the exact scenario, but I expect him to have like aviator or something.
I was watching this and I was just thinking, how much of a tryhard do you have to be? You earn 98 points, your opponent has 55 points. Why are you not just triggering this last break so you can end the game? And then, as it turns out, it actually became pretty close. Like, you only won with 12 points, so you were completely correct slow playing.
I'm sure it would matter giving him an extra turn here, but there are games where it's the difference between winning and losing, right?
Yeah. It's also kind of funny that you're at 98 points here, but I feel like if you could, you would literally just end the game right now, right? If you had
Yeah.
like 99 points, you're just one
Yeah.
point short of actually closing the game right now.
Yeah, it would be even better if my sponsors were at 2, so I could break for 2 money, and then I could do build pavilion,
Yeah.
to threaten the game that way.
Yeah, I can see that. It's kind of funny.
I do believe he broke after I did cards, right?
I think he didn't
Yeah,
break 2
because
like you said he should. I think he did something else and then you took cards, yeah.
Yeah, because I think I draw a breeding program from display here
Yeah.
to be able to stall a bit longer.
I kind of admire the game that these small things can be so important, but at the same time I also kind of hate it. Because in some scenarios you just stall for all eternity and nobody really wants to break, so it turns into who can keep making stupid action until the other guy finally folds.
Yeah, I think it's fairly rare, at least how the metagame is in Ark right now. It's very fast and break-oriented, I'd say. Like, you're actually benefiting from breaking. Usually, like, maybe one person has a project and takes snapping, so, like, he's just gonna try to push the break to see more cards, etc.
But at the same time, you still think that it's really important to play a lot of sponsor cards. So
Yeah. I know Fred Pacifist talked about this in Terraforming Mars as well. Who's the beatdown?
yeah, I know him.
Yeah, but there's a very common concept in Magic the Gathering. Who's the beatdown? Who's trying to push the breaks? Which happens a lot of games.
So this one I'm not entirely sure about. I'm very curious to hear your take on this. But the way I view the game is, unless I know what to do, I just take Handsize. It's like the default setting for me. So reasons to take Handsize, the way I see it. Good players may punish you by forcing you to discard, like we talked about. It's not the biggest of deals if you have to discard, but it's still annoying sometimes. Especially if you want to keep luxury late game cards like Eagles and blind releases and so on. This one you're gonna debate with me. I'm looking at it and I'm regretting the way I phrase it here. Because I also say that in some cases it's kind of nice to have Handsize to set up some pouch or some sunbathing. The counter argument is also, well, if you can do it before the other guy breaks, you literally don't need Handsize because you could just pouch or sell your cards. I can see this one as like a double-edged sword. And finally, like we talked about a few times, if you are going the Unistrat, you usually get 2 upgrades instead of, if you take Partner Sushi, you only get 1 upgrade.
I'm a bit curious how many games where you do a project after the first break. I suspect it's only like 50% of games or something. So if you don't have a project, it's generally better to start on University, because then you're going to have 2 upgrades. Let's say you get Handsize break 0, and then you do a project break 2, like even, or break 1. And take snapping, and then you really want to push the break, you don't want to give your opponent time in the round, then you're going to have to take cards to advance the break back 2, and suddenly you're going to have a lot of cards in your hand that you can't play. Like, they're still good, but at a later point, then Handsize is a lot better, right? Also, if you do a project break 1 and you don't have Handsize, let's say your opponent beat you to getting Handsize break 0, it could actually be an issue, like if you just want to keep doing projects, which happens sometimes, if you don't have Handsize, because you might not end up getting Handsize until like break 3 or something, or break 4.
Yeah. And also this idea about denying universities. If you're not taking Handsize now, maybe your opponent is straight up denying the Handsize from you in the next round.
Not that you can't get it, but more that you have better things to do, like you could do a project instead of getting university, get another bonus that way. But also, if you get Handsize instead of Science and 2 rep, my opponent can't get Handsize. He might have a lot of deadweight cards that are good later on, but not at the moment. And then maybe he ends up in a scenario where he doesn't have Handsize and just want to keep on spamming projects, and he has to discard like a lot of good cards. So like, even if you can play out your hand and you don't get any benefit from Science 2 rep, it's still better to get Handsize just so your opponent can't get it break 0.
Yeah, I was expecting you to disagree with me on some of it, but we're pretty much in agreement. Handsize are pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's dynamic, right? In general, it's hard to say anything generic about Ark, but that's also what makes Ark
such a good game.
Every game is different.
Yeah, like we talked about before, if you are taking Handsize, you also have this option to go for this super fast break. That's super annoying before anyone plays any animals. The way I see it pretty much is like Handsize is just the default go-to if I don't know what to do. If I don't have a reason to do anything else, I'll just take Handsize. But in some scenarios, maybe there is something else you want to do. If you have a third spot on a base project or a breeding program at the start of the next round, then of course it makes a lot of sense to take a partner suit. It could also be that you need a partner suit to play one of the good cards, one of these for example. Could also be be that you need a 2 science uni for Tamarin or something, even though we talked about Tamarin is probably only good if you need the VP to get to the 2 VP bonus or something like this. You can also get the 2 rip uni for a super fast upgrade. You can also get the 2 rip uni to get some of these. Maybe you can start the game with Aquarium. To be honest, there are actually a lot of reasons why you should not take Handsize, but you have to have a reason to not take Handsize. Otherwise, just take Handsize is what I'm saying. Do you have anything else to add to all of this?
I think you're good.
Okay. Tip number 10. You should look at your opponents. Yeah, so of course we just talked about breaking. When are they capable of breaking? When are they likely to break? Where is the association action card? And who is winning the race to some important conservation project? When they are likely to grab that really good card, do you have to spend an X to snap it or dig it away or something? Can you deny your opponent? Can you block your opponent on some of the good cards or some of the good projects or universities? I have a quick example here where I'm definitely looking at what my opponent is doing. Is he gonna break? What about the race and association and stuff like this? So this is kind of a weird situation. I know I'm putting you on the spot because it's not fair to ask you since you're not playing the game, but in this situation here, is there anything that strikes you?
I can't see your opponent's board, so I'm not sure what he's up to over there.
This is the opponent's view. So I already know about this Sun Bear because he snapped it earlier. What I realized in this position is there is a big race to species 5. It's actually a bit awkward because he can actually win it before me. So in this position, it would be natural just to take cards, or maybe break 4 or something, or maybe spend my worker or something, but I really have to be careful because what I really want to do here is make sure that he can't break, because if he breaks right now, I don't have any X tokens, so if he breaks next turn, then he can actually win species 5 with 2 animals into his worker on 5 at the start of the next round. Does that make sense? It's kind of a so it's kind of a funny situation where I don't really want to take cards, I don't really want to break 4, I don't really want to use my worker either, so I think I just end up like just Xing my cards just to make sure that I get this species 5 before my opponent. For half a second I was like, well, I don't really know what he has, but surely if he does take Sun Bear and then he can snap up Ibex and the break, for example, well, he could take species 5, but then is he really gonna do that? Because it's gonna be awful for his enclosures. He has an enclosure on 3 and an enclosure on 4, so... But you know, I just didn't want to take any chances, so I just X'd something, because in any case I do want to take species 5 before the break, so I can get the bonus, right? So yeah. In the last round, you could also calculate the points that your opponent has and that you have on sponsor cards and try to predict which in-game scoring cards they have. You did say last time that you don't do this as much as you should, but when I look at your games, you definitely do it more than me. Try to actually guess what kind of in-game card they have and try to math out when you can cross and when you're gonna win the game when crossing in these close games.
Yeah, it's more of a thing when you get better. What can my opponent do here? How many turns do I have left in the game, etc.
Yeah. Who crosses first will kind of give 1 free action to the opponent. Is that +1 action gonna be important, or is it fine to just cross right now? I guess that's really the assessment you have to make, right?
Yeah. Oh my god, I have Sam's stream on in the background. He has messed up the first move of the game.
Oh no, what did he do?
No, there's a spot that he compoed on 1 and he had 2 ways to grab it, and instead he just led on a partner, so which he doesn't need right now. Oh no, opponent. This guy is higher elo than me right now, by the way.
Sam?
I mean, currently, but
Alright.
I do have a positive win rate against him. I was like 6 games in a row or something, but then I lost the other day to him because he got lucky, you know?
Yeah, always lucky.
It's never me, it's only like the luck, you know?
Yeah.
I never make a misplay at all.
Oh.